De-escalate, how to calm an angry person in 90 seconds or less. Part of the series, Titans of Mediation, with seasoned mediator trainer Dr. Barbara Manuso. That is your topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hi, everyone. This is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis, lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Dr. Barbara Sunderland Manuso, mediator, arbitrator, and trainer of mediators. And I'm in Rhode Island and in Texas. And we are just thrilled today to have as our guest Doug Noll. And Doug Noll has written a book, one of many, and this one addresses how to de-escalate in 90 seconds. And I bet nobody listening to this program has ever been in a dispute with anybody where they felt they had to de-escalate themselves or a situation that they were contending with. And of course, I'm saying that with my tongue in cheek, because I think we all experience this on a regular basis. So Doug, you are a lawyer, you're a professor at a law school, obviously a mediator and an author, and you have been one of the titans of mediation for well over 20 years that I've known you. And I couldn't be more pleased with what you bring to the mediation community and to society in general, because this de-escalation is not limited to trying to de-escalate our parties in a mediation center, but you have a practical set of skills that resonate so well with anybody at any situation that they've encountered. So Doug, tell us why you were able to pull this book together so well, and what is the magic formula that you have for de-escalating conflict within 90 seconds? That's the broad question, and I know that Natalia and Mac Pierre will have some other questions to ask you as well as we go, but I'm very excited about this topic.
Well, the book came about at the request of my incarcerated students in the Prison of Peace project that I co-founded with Laurel Coffer. And we had hundreds, if not thousands, of inmates who knew that I was an author and asked me to write a book that they could share with their families about what we were teaching them in maximum security prisons on how to be peacemakers and mediators. So that was the impetus for the book. The foundational skill that the book is based on, I developed in 2005. My experience, as I'm sure all of you as mediators have experienced, is that when we go through basic mediation training, we're often taught a skill called active listening, which we all know is worthless. Always has been, always will be, will never work. And the reason is that it's based on a misunderstanding of the work of Thomas Gordon, who was a mid-20th century psychologist working with the great humanist psychologist Carl Rogers. And without going into all the details about how Gordon's work has been misconstrued in both the therapy world and in the peacemaking world, I can just say that from personal experience, when people use an I statement saying, "What I think you really are is angry," my experience in trying that kind of active listening is that it only escalates the conflict further. But that's what I was taught when I was working on my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies. That was the only skill that people really knew about. And even though it didn't work, they felt, professors felt they have to teach something, and mediator trainers have to teach something. So they continue to teach something that just plain doesn't work. So I was in a very difficult mediation in 2005, and I had been studying neuroscience for over 7 years at that point in time. And finally, it all coalesced in my head. And the thought came to me, listen to the emotions. And that's what I did. And it was the result was instantaneous and miraculous. I had this divorced couple who spent $50,000 each on attorney's fees fighting over an $18,000 problem. They were about as angry and as uncivil towards each other as you can imagine. If there had been knives on the table, there would have been blood on the floor. And when I stopped them and got them to start listening to each other's emotions and validating each other's emotional experience rather than listening to the words, everybody calmed down. And by the time it was all over with, the plaintiff, the man, put his face in his hands and started sobbing. And for about 3 or 4 minutes, and he finally finished, and he looked up across the table and he said that he looked to his ex-wife and said, "That's the first time you've listened to me in 25 years."
Wow.
Yeah. And they quickly negotiated a dismissal of a lawsuit, recognizing how stupid it was, and walked out holding hands to have lunch with each other. 3 hours before, they were about ready to kill each other.
My goodness.
Well, you could have picked my jaw up with a forklift, to say the least.
I bet.
But I knew what I'd done. So I started using it in other mediations, and I got exactly the same result. And then in 2007, Matthew Lieberman, neuroscientist at UCLA, came out with his seminal brain scanning study that showed exactly what happens in the brain when you do this technique called affect labeling, when you de-escalate. And so it has become, in my opinion, a foundational skill of life that every person needs to know how to do, because it works first time every time on any human brain on the planet. And it's grounded in hard neuroscience, and it works. So that's that, and that led to the Prison of Peace project, which led to my fourth book, De-escalate.
And me, being a passionate reader of this book and actually a listener, I want to add up to that. Because, okay, when the writer of a book and someone who invented the theory is passionate about, we all understand it, but we do have, let us say, a little distance to what this person is saying. This is their baby, and they're just talking in all the best terms of it. But me, being an absolutely objective reader, I can really say that it was like a balm, like really like an elixir into things that I've been reading about before, that were put together to really come up with certain things that can be life changing for many people. Just to mention that the book also concerns the escalating emotions of the minors. So, speaking with like 13 or 14 years old when they don't want to speak at all, how to get to them, how to get the difficult emotions that are in them so that they feel that they are listened to. And also, this Prisoners of Peace, Prisoners of Peace project. With all the good outcome it brought so far. How many people were touched by your project, Doug, in terms of prisoners in those high crime prisons
I
and
would
high
say
conflict prisons?
we're international, so it's hard for me to say what the total number is, but well over 20,000 people. And in California, about 3,000 or 4,000 of our students, maybe as many as 6,000, have been released. Not one reported reoffending from any of our students. To our knowledge, none of our students have ever reoffended.
And then what it really comes back, because everybody that can be listening to that, okay, the author is so enthusiastic, the reader is so enthusiastic, something suspicious about it. And the thing is that to a degree, it is very easy to try and understand it and try to apply it, because it just requires actually listening, but listening the other way, listening not to the words that can be hurtful, that can bring a lot of damage into any relationship, and that sometimes are a product of a very quick, instant emotion and are actually later on regretted. but listen to the emotion. And actually, you give so many wonderful tips. Like, it's fantastic to, when you listen to the emotion, not to the words, you don't get insulted, actually, because you don't really hear and adhere to what was said to you in the conversation. Then behind all of that, you see a person with the real self, with their emotions that you can get through to. And what I was so pleased about is that this topic of emotions and of us being emotional selves was actually very important for me, because this is what I see in the family law. It's like pure emotions. And even in the courtroom, there are so many emotions. Even in the mediation, there are so much of a mixture of the feelings. And so I combined my knowledge, which I knew so far, with your achievements in the book, and it just matches so perfectly. This is why I really so highly recommend to listen to the book. And one more insight: the book is written by Doug, but it is read on Audible by his wife, and she does a perfect job on that. The book consists of many little exercises that everybody can follow and actually learn and learn and learn. And when it is being read by Doug's wife, it's just amazing how it clicks. It's just you begin to realize certain mistakes you've been making yourself, but also other people that have been doing that. Enough of praising. Now I wanted to ask you a question. This question is a very important one for me, because in the meantime, you are mentioning something that was, you are showing a way forward. But the point where we are starting is where people come and they are so much hurt, not heard and hurt, in a way that has been um, emotionally invalidating them throughout their entire lives. I would want you to say a word about that, because this is something we encounter every single day, that can be from the parents, from our friends, from people around us in the everyday situations. And can you say what it is, this emotional invalidation, and what detriment it can cause? I'll be so grateful.
Emotional invalidation, in my opinion, is the most insidious and pervasive form of emotional abuse that exists in human society.
Define it for us a little
I
bit.
will. I'm going to do
Yes.
it this way. Mac, you remember when you were 2 years old and you were out running around and you fell over and you scraped your knee and you started crying? What were you told?
uh, Either stop crying
Right.
or, oh, stop crying.
Right.
That's-
It could be stop crying, be tough, be a manly man, don't be a girly girl, big boys don't cry. That's emotional invalidation. Parents do it thinking they've got to toughen their kids up. But what they're really doing, anytime we're told not to feel, or we're told that we should feel differently, or we're judged or criticized for experiencing an emotion, we are being emotionally invalidated. And what the science shows is that when you do that to a child in particular, you're not toughening them up, you're destroying their brain, literally destroying their brain. There's a study out of San Diego called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study that talks about what happens to adults that have grown up in abusive situations, like emotionally invalidating parents. And what it shows is that when you have had 3 strikes or 3 adverse childhood experiences, you are 10 times more likely to die of cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diabetes. You're more likely to go to prison, more likely to be addicted. There is a direct causal relationship between emotional invalidation in childhood and very poor outcomes as adults. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are studies that show when parents validate their children through affect labeling, which is the basic skill I talk about in de-escalate, that within 5 years, those children are 2 grade levels ahead of their peers and have a maturity of somebody who's 10 years older than they are. Their emotional maturity and intelligence goes through the roof in less than 5 years. So we have studies that show what happens when you do it the wrong way, and we have studies that show what happens when you do it the right way, and it makes a huge difference. Um, all of this, I think, is critically important from a social perspective, because we face a lot of crime right now. We face a lot of polarization, a lot of anger. And I think it all comes back to the fact that we're not taking the time to listen each other into existence. And really what people really want is to be heard at a very deep, deep level. And when you listen to emotions as opposed to words, you provide that service in a very profound way.
Thank you. Could you go into a little bit of the science, the scientific findings when you were saying earlier that
Yes.
brain scanning technology is revealing certain conclusions? Speak a little bit about that, please.
Yeah. So Lieberman's seminal study in 2007, which you can easily get on Google, just put in Matthew Lieberman putting feelings into words, and you'll get the PDF if you want to read a neuroscience study. What he basically found was that when people are affect labeled, this is the technical term for the idea of when people are told how they're feeling, they're told what their emotions are, that some really remarkable things happen in the brain. First of all, the emotional centers of the brain, primarily around the amygdala, are inhibited. So the emotional centers quiet down. There you go. And he, at the same time, the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex is activated so that people can start to think again. And it's so what happens when we do this affect labeling is that we are literally lending our prefrontal cortex to the to this upset person for the 90 seconds it takes for that person's prefrontal cortex to come back online. And this is all based on what I discovered, and then of course Lieberman's study in 2007 that we're looking at now shows the science as to why all of this works the way that it does, and it's extremely powerful. So powerful that when Laurel and I started the Prison of Peace project in 2010, this was the first foundational skill that we taught to all our students, but with our first cohort of women at that time in the largest, most violent women's prison in the world. And this is the basic skill that we taught to prepare them to become mediators and peacemakers. So let me describe the skill. It's very simple.
Yes.
It's easy. Let me put it this way. It's easy to describe, not so easy to execute. It takes a little practice. But 3 steps. Number 1, ignore the angry words. If somebody is angry at you or at somebody else, just ignore what they're saying. It's all white noise. That'll prevent you from getting triggered and free up your brain to do the next 2 steps. Second step, read the emotional data fields of this angry person. Emotions are data, just like numbers on a spreadsheet. Our brains, through evolution, have an innate ability to read the emotional experiences of another person accurately and quickly. Just let your unconscious do the work. It knows how to do it. It's an innate ability, and within seconds, emotional words will be coming into your consciousness. Third step, reflect back the emotions with a simple you statement. So I would say, you're angry, or you're really frustrated, you're sad, you feel disrespected and unappreciated and unheard. You're feeling some shame and humiliation. You feel abandoned and unloved. You're really anxious and worried. And the whole thing is just really making you angry. So notice that all I was doing was reflecting back with a you statement and emotional words. I'm not paraphrasing their words. I'm not asking questions. I'm not asking how they feel. I'm not using I statements. Very simple you statements. And then you watch for 4 things. You're looking for a vertical nod of the head, at least in the Western world. And other parts of the world, they tilt their heads, different kind of a nod. But you're looking for an affirmative nod of the head. You're looking for a verbal response like a yeah or exactly, usually with some emphasis. You're looking for a dropping of the shoulders and an exhalation or a sigh of relief. And when you see those 4 involuntary relaxation responses, you've de-escalated, and now you can move on to problem solving. So the mantra that I teach is de-escalate first, then problem solve. Most people don't do it that way. They try to problem solve first, and that only makes matters worse because it's a form of emotional invalidation.
Well, that's quite, it sounds so simplistic, when I hear you say it, and as you're talking, I have mediations floating through my head on how could it have gone better had I done X, Y, Z. And of all, I'm thinking of one. I had a man at a mediation, a government employment case, and he went on for probably about 45 minutes. He went back 20 years, everything that had been wrong, and went on. And I said, "So you don't feel that they've shown you any respect?" And he dropped his head, and the tears started flowing down his face. And so I didn't realize that I was actually uh, shadowing your concept here. But now that I know to use a you statement and to go for the emotion as opposed to the words that are being said, what a difference I think that could make, helping even other people at the table who are so angry with each other that they haven't been able to hear each other. How do you address that? An example of a divorce case, a family mediation. How
I had a $27 million divorce that I was mediating. Big
uh-huh.
case, a lot of money.
Yeah.
Dairy farmer, dairy family. And all I did for a week on end is affect label the wife and keep her calm. And her lawyer came up to me every day and said, "Thank you for what you're doing." I couldn't control her. And we ultimately got everything resolved. Where this is particularly effective in mediation is when you've got a lawyer. We've seen this a million times. You come in with a plaintiff's demand to the defense room, and you present it, and the lawyer, whether he or she's showboating or is actually outrageous, that's an insulting first offer, right?
Right.
Okay, we see it all the time. It's stupid,
They're
childish
paid to do
behavior.
it.
But the way to respond to that is, oh, this offer, you feel deeply disrespected by this offer. You feel like they're not taking you seriously. You feel like nothing that you've been saying has been heard by the other side, and that it really makes you angry and a little bit unhappy and anxious that you're not being taken seriously. As soon as you do that, that lawyer not only calms down, but will now trust you because you understand where that lawyer is coming from. And you'll actually be able to get a lot more concessions from the lawyer and the client than you would if you took the typical mediator's position on that. So this is not only for de-escalating clients, it's also for de-escalating lawyers. I actually use it more with lawyers than I do with clients.
Well, Doug, you certainly have a wonderful book here, De-Escalate, How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. And in the interview that we've just had, you've already given us so many great tips. And any mediator who does not read this book and use the wonderful formulas that you present, I don't think are worth their weight in salt. And again, Doug, you are a titan of mediation, and we certainly value and applaud you for your contributions to the mediation and mediation community. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Doug Noll.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right, everyone, check it out on YouTube or information.com. Thanks so much. Until next time.